The notification came at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, and it was not from a stranger. It was from my own father. He had taken a screenshot of the lowest moment of my professional life, added 3 laughing emojis, and posted it to the family group chat with a caption that said, "This is what happens when you think you're smarter than everyone else." By morning, 17 family members had reacted. 14 of them had laughed. My aunt had added her own comment, calling it a wake-up call. My cousin had screenshot it again and shared it somewhere else. And my father, the man who was supposed to be the one person in the world who protected my dignity, had not taken it down. He left it up. He let it stay. He let them all pile on. I was 31 years old, sitting alone in my apartment with my phone face down on the kitchen counter, and I made a decision in that silence that I did not tell a single person about. I was going to rebuild. And when I was done, I was not going to let one of them take credit for a single inch of it. Before this story goes any further, I want to ask you something honestly. If the person who was supposed to protect your name was the one destroying it, would you confront them right away, or would you go quiet and build something they could never laugh at again? Think about that as you listen to what Lousia did next, because her answer might surprise you. My name is Lousia, and I want to start by telling you the kind of person my father believed I was, because it matters for everything that comes after this. He believed I was the safe one, the responsible one, the daughter who would always pick up the phone, always show up to Sunday dinner, always smile at the right moments, always smooth over the awkward silences, and always make sure the family looked good from the outside. He believed I was the one who did not need much, who did not ask for recognition, who was simply grateful to be included. And for a long time, he was not entirely wrong about that. I had spent most of my 20s being exactly that person. I kept the peace. I helped when I was asked. I loaned money I was never paid back. I drove 2 hours in the rain to help my cousin move furniture on a Saturday when I had a work deadline the following Monday. I showed up. I always showed up. And because I always showed up, nobody ever thought to ask what it cost me. My father's name is Raymond. He is 63 years old, and he has a particular way of talking about the family that makes it sound like a business he is running. He talks about legacy and reputation and how things look from the outside. He cares, genuinely cares, about what the neighbors think, what the relatives at church think, what his old coworkers from the accounting firm think when they see a post on his Facebook page. Image is not just important to Raymond. Image is almost everything. And if you do something that makes the image look bad, he takes it personally, as if your failure is something that happened directly to him. My mother passed away when I was 19. Her name was Cecilia. She was quiet and warm, and she had a way of ending arguments by simply making tea and sitting at the table until everyone calmed down. When she died, something went missing from our household that we never really named and never really replaced. My father remarried 3 years later, a woman named Patricia, who is perfectly pleasant in the way that someone can be perfectly pleasant while also making it clear that you are a guest in your own father's house. Patricia has 2 grown sons from a previous marriage. Their names are Derek and Marcus. They are, in Raymond's telling of every story, exceptional. Derek runs a small landscaping company. Marcus sells insurance. They are fine. They are ordinary, hardworking, mostly decent people. But in Raymond's retelling, they are closer to exceptional men who had simply not yet been discovered by the world. I do not blame Derek and Marcus for this. They did not ask to be turned into the measuring stick my father used to measure me. But they became that thing anyway, slowly, across years of Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings and casual comments made over pasta that were not quite insults, but were never quite compliments either. Raymond had a way of praising Derek's work ethic right after I mentioned a setback at my job. He had a way of talking about Marcus's confidence right after I described a situation where I had been nervous. It was never direct. It was never the kind of thing you could point at and say, "That was cruel," because if you said that, Raymond would look at you with genuine confusion and tell you that he was simply making conversation. I worked in digital marketing for 7 years. I had built a career doing content strategy and brand management for mid-size companies, and I was good at it. I was not famous inside the industry, but I was respected, and I had built real relationships with real clients who hired me again and again. In the spring of my 31st year, I decided to make a move I had been planning quietly for about 18 months. I was going to leave my full-time position at the agency where I worked and start my own consultancy. I had savings. I had 3 clients already committed to coming with me. I had a business plan I had written and rewritten and shown to a mentor I trusted. I had done the math carefully. I had thought about the risk seriously, and I made the decision. I did not announce it to the family right away. I told my father privately, because I wanted him to hear it from me first. I drove to his house on a Sunday evening and sat at the kitchen table while Patricia made coffee she did not bring out until 20 minutes into the conversation, and I told Raymond that I was starting my own business. I told him the name. I told him the plan. I told him about the clients who had already committed. I told him about my savings runway. I was careful. I was thorough. I wanted him to see that I had thought this through. Raymond listened. He nodded. He asked 2 questions, both of which were about what would happen if it failed. I answered them both. And then he said something I have thought about many times since. He said, "Lousia, you have always been a little too confident for your own situation." He did not say it with heat. He said it like it was simply a fact, the way you might tell someone they have a small dent in the back bumper of their car. Calm, informational. As if my confidence, whatever small amount of it I had managed to grow across 31 years, was slightly more than I had earned the right to carry. I drove home that evening and I told myself it did not matter. I had already made the decision. I was not asking for permission. I was informing him out of respect, and I had done that, and now I was going to go build the thing. The first 4 months were hard in ways I had expected and hard in ways I had not. Clients were slow to pay. My 3rd committed client had a budget crisis 2 weeks after I launched and paused their contract. I had to renegotiate a lease on a small shared office space because I realized I could not justify the cost yet. I worked from my apartment kitchen table for a stretch of 3 months that felt much longer. I did not tell the family any of this because I knew what telling the family would produce. It would produce exactly what Raymond had been waiting to say, which was that he had known, and that this was what happens when someone is too confident for their situation. But I had made an error. I had mentioned the name of my consultancy in a comment on a mutual friend's social media post, a harmless professional mention, and someone in the extended family had seen it and started following the business page I had set up. The business page was not very active yet because I was heads down working rather than posting, and that sparse page, that barely started presence, was apparently enough for a relative named Greta, my father's cousin's wife, to remark in the family group chat that she had looked up Lousia's business, and it looked like it had about 12 followers and no reviews. What happened next is the thing I cannot fully explain, even now, because it requires me to believe that my own father consciously chose to make it worse rather than better, and some part of me still struggles to hold that clearly. Raymond did not defend me. He did not say anything to Greta privately. He did not close the conversation. What he did was take a screenshot of the business page. He took a screenshot of the follower count, which was indeed low because I had barely promoted the page, and he added it to a message he sent to the family group chat. The caption he wrote was, "This is what happens when you think you're smarter than everyone else." And then he added 3 laughing emojis. I need you to sit with what that moment actually was. My father, the person who knew I had left a stable job to start something hard, who knew I was in the early months of building something from zero, who knew the emotional and financial risk I had taken, chose to take the most surface-level evidence of my struggling early stage and turn it into a joke for 17 family members to participate in. He did not take a screenshot of my business plan. He did not take a screenshot of the emails from clients who were happy with my work. He took the follower count on a page I had barely started and presented it as proof that I had been foolish and deserved to be laughed at. And they laughed, they did laugh. 14 laughing reactions. My Aunt Bev wrote, "Oh no, honey." My cousin Terrence wrote, "Should have stayed at the agency." Greta, who had started the whole thing, wrote, "I feel bad, but also the signs were there." Marcus, Patricia's son, wrote nothing, but he left a laughing reaction, and somehow that felt worse than the comments. Derek left a heart react, which I think was his attempt at kindness. But even that felt like pity wearing a costume. Raymond left the post up overnight. He left it up through the next morning. I found out about it at 11, 47 at night because a family member, my cousin Sandra, who is one of the few people in that family I truly trust, texted me privately to say, "Lousia, I'm so sorry. Your dad posted something really unkind, and I don't know why no one is stopping him." Sandra did not have the power to remove it from the group. She could only tell me it existed. I looked at it. I read every reaction and every comment. And then I put my phone face down on the kitchen counter, and I sat in my kitchen for a long time without moving. I want to be honest about what that silence felt like because I think it matters. It was not just embarrassment. It was not just anger, though the anger was there, hot and clean and bright. What it was, more than anything, was a kind of reckoning. A moment where something I had suspected for years suddenly had a face on it. My father had always managed my ambitions with quiet discouragement, with calm doubts, with the constant comparison to Derek and Marcus, with the small remarks and the noncommittal nods. But this was different. This was public. This was chosen. He had options in that moment. He could have said nothing. He could have defended me. He could have privately messaged Greta and told her to mind her business. Instead, he chose to become the person leading the pylon. He chose to be the loudest voice, laughing at his own daughter. I did not cry that night. I am telling you that not because I think it makes me tough, but because it is true. I was past crying. I was in a different kind of feeling, something colder and more settled. I made a list in a notebook I keep on my kitchen counter, a plain black spiral notebook I use for business thinking. I wrote the date at the top. I wrote down what had happened in plain sentences. And then I wrote one line at the bottom of the page that I underlined twice. It said, "Do not explain yourself, build the proof instead." I went to bed. I woke up early. I did not respond to the group chat. I did not call Raymond. I did not send a long emotional message. I blocked the family group chat notifications and I got to work. Over the next 11 weeks, I did more focused building than I had done in the previous 4 months combined. Part of it was the energy that came from pure resolve. Part of it was that by choosing not to spend my emotional energy on the family drama, I had more of it available for work. I reached out to former colleagues and asked for referrals with a specificity I had been too cautious to use before. I stopped waiting for clients to find me and started going directly to businesses I wanted to work with. I redid the business page my father had mocked and built it properly, with case studies, clear messaging, and the kind of professional visual identity that signals competence rather than hustle. I started publishing short pieces of content about digital strategy that were genuinely useful, not fluff, not filler, actual practical thinking that people in the industry could use. I posted consistently, and I kept my standards high. Sandra, my cousin, was watching from a distance. She texted me once during this period, just to check in, and I told her I was working. She said, "Good, I'm proud of you." That was the only family conversation I had for about 2 months, and honestly, it was enough. By the end of month 3 after the incident, I had added 4 new clients. 2 of them were referrals from my original clients, which meant my work was good enough that people were recommending me without being asked. One was from a connection I had made through a piece of content I published. One came through a genuine cold outreach that had worked because I had done my research carefully before I wrote the message. The business page my father had mocked had grown from 12 followers to over 3,000, most of them genuinely interested in the content, not bought, not fake. My revenue for that month was the highest it had been since I launched. Not comfortable money yet, but real momentum money, the kind that tells you the direction is right even if the destination is still a few more hard months away. I did not post about any of this publicly. I did not send a screenshot to the family group chat with a laughing emoji of my own. I was not interested in performing revenge. I was interested in building something real, and something real does not need an audience during construction. Then 2 things happened within the same week that changed the situation in ways I had not planned for. The first was an article. A local business publication, a well-regarded one that covered regional entrepreneurs and small business news, reached out to interview me about content strategy for small businesses. They had found one of my published pieces and thought it would make a good feature. The article came out on a Thursday morning. It included my name, my company name, a short quote from one of my clients about the results they had gotten, and a photograph of me at my desk, looking focused and unbothered. It was not a glamorous article. It was a professional one, the kind that makes people take you seriously. It was shared on social media by the publication and by several people in the local business community. Within a few hours, it was also shared by some of the mutual contacts, the family, and I shared online. Raymond saw the article by Friday morning. I know this because Sandra texted me at 9:22 that morning and said, "Your dad just showed the article to Patricia in the kitchen and went very quiet." I did not respond to that text with anything except a single emoji, a small plant, which is the one I send Sandra when I want her to know I heard her without making it a conversation. The second thing that happened that week was a phone call I received on Saturday afternoon from a number I recognized but had not spoken to in over 2 months. It was Raymond. I let it ring. He called again 20 minutes later. I let it ring again. He called a third time that evening and left a voicemail. I listened to the voicemail sitting at my kitchen counter in the same spot where I had put my phone face down the night he had posted the screenshot. The voicemail was 3 minutes and 41 seconds long. I know the exact length because I played it twice. Raymond's voice was careful in the way his voice gets when he knows he is on uncertain ground. He said he had seen the article. He said he was proud of me. He said he wanted to take me to dinner. He said he felt like there was some distance between us lately, and he wanted to fix that. And then, near the end of the voicemail, he said something that told me exactly what this phone call was really about. He said, "Marcus has been thinking about rebranding his insurance practice, and I told him you might have some ideas." There it was. I played that part again just to make sure I had heard it correctly. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of what he had done. A request. He had seen the article, understood that I had real clients and real results and a real business, and his first move was to call me with a job to hand me. I sat with that voicemail for a long time. I thought about who Raymond is, not who I wished he was, but who he actually is. He is a man who leads with usefulness. In his mind, the way to repair something is to offer something, to create a transaction that makes the discomfort go away. He was not calling to say he had been wrong. He was calling because the article had made me legible to him in a language he understood, which was the language of visible success. And now that I was legible, he wanted access. I did not call him back that day. I thought about what I wanted to say and whether I wanted to say it at all. I thought about the 17 family members in that group chat. I thought about the laughing emojis. I thought about the phrase, "too confident for your own situation." I thought about my mother Cecilia and her quiet way of sitting at the table until everyone calmed down. And I thought about how her patience had sometimes looked like wisdom and sometimes looked like something else. And I was no longer sure I wanted to inherit that particular version of patience. I called Raymond back on a Sunday evening, 6 days after his voicemail. I let it ring twice before he picked up, which told me he had been waiting. His voice was immediately warm and a little too eager, the voice he uses when he is trying to set a tone before you can set one of your own. I let him finish his greeting and I said, plainly and without heat, that I had heard his voicemail and I wanted to talk about a few things before we discussed anything else. He said, of course. I told him that I had seen what he had posted in the family group chat 2.5 months ago. I said it simply. I told him I had seen the screenshot he had taken, the caption he had written, and all 14 of the laughing reactions that had followed. I did not raise my voice. I did not use dramatic pauses. I just said what happened the way I had written it in my notebook that night, in plain sentences. Raymond was quiet for a moment. Then he said he did not remember it quite that way. He said he had been joking and that he had not meant for it to come across as harsh as it apparently had. He said family is family, and these things happen in family group chats and nobody meant any real harm. He said he thought I had known him long enough to know he always believed in me. I let him finish, and then I said, "Raymond, I have the screenshot." I said it the way you say something when you are simply confirming a fact. I have the screenshot. I know exactly what you wrote and exactly what the reactions were and exactly how long you left it up before it was quietly removed 3 days later. I have it. So let us not spend time on what you remember and what you do not remember, because the record is there if we need it. The silence on his end was different this time. It was not the silence of someone gathering their thoughts. It was the silence of someone who had just realized the conversation was not going the way they had planned. He said he was sorry. He said it in that particular way that men like Raymond say sorry, which is with just enough genuine discomfort to be real and just enough speed to keep moving past it. He was sorry. He had not been thinking. He knew it was not fair. He hoped I could understand it was not how he truly felt about me or my work. I said I heard him. I said I appreciated that he had said it. And I said that I wanted to be honest about something else before we moved forward. I told him that I had been thinking, over the past several months, about the way the family tends to treat my work and my choices, and I had made a decision. I was not interested in being the family member who proves herself quietly and then hands the credit back to the people who doubted her. I was building my business carefully, and I was going to continue building it on my terms, and that included which clients I worked with and why. He heard that. I could tell he heard it because he did not immediately ask about Marcus again. He asked what I meant by on my terms, and I said it meant I needed professional relationships that started in the right place, which was respect, not rescue. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said he understood. I do not know if he fully did, but he said it, and that was enough for the moment. Over the following weeks, several things happened that I had not specifically planned for, but that I had, in some way, made possible by rebuilding on a foundation of real work rather than family approval. The article had traveled further than I expected. A regional business development group had shared it in their newsletter, and 2 of their member companies reached out to me about potential projects. One of those conversations moved quickly and became a real contract within 3 weeks. The other took a bit longer, but eventually came through as a smaller project that turned into something bigger 4 months later. My business was not just surviving anymore. It had crossed a threshold, quiet and unmarked from the outside, where the question shifted from whether it would work to how big it would actually get. Sandra called me one evening and she told me something that made me sit down. She said that at a recent family gathering she had attended, which I had not been at, Raymond had talked about my work. Not mockingly, not doubtfully. He had talked about it with something that sounded, in Sandra's careful description, like pride. He had shown someone the article on his phone. He had said the name of my company correctly for the first time, which Sandra noted with a small laugh because Raymond had been mispronouncing it for months. He had not said anything that acknowledged the group chat incident. He had not repaired anything publicly, but the narrative had shifted in his telling. In his telling now, I was a daughter who had taken a risk and made it work, and he was a father watching that happen. I want to be careful here about what I felt when Sandra told me that. Part of me felt something that was close to relief, not because I needed his pride, but because the absence of his respect had been a weight I had been carrying longer than I realized. Part of me felt something cooler and more settled, which was a recognition that the version of me Raymond was now proud of was the same version of me who had existed 2.5 months ago when he posted that screenshot. I had not changed. My follower count had changed. My article coverage had changed. The visible proof had changed. And that meant the pride he was now showing was not really about me. It was about what I looked like from the outside again. It was about the image, the way things look. And knowing that did not make it easy to dismiss because it still came from my father, but it did make it clear. I made a decision around this time that I want to tell you about because I think it was the most important practical decision I made in that whole period. I decided to formalize my business in a way I had been putting off. I registered the company as a proper legal entity, set up a real business bank account separate from my personal finances, and began putting a small percentage of every payment into a reserve fund I called simply the No Fund, because its purpose was to give me the ability to say no without panic. If a client was disrespectful, the No Fund made it possible to end the relationship without financial emergency. If a family situation created pressure to give my time or skills for free, the No Fund meant I had enough stability to hold my boundary. It was not a large fund in the beginning, but it was real, and it was mine, and it was built on my terms. About 6 weeks after the phone call with Raymond, Patricia called me. This surprised me because Patricia and I had a polite but not warm relationship, and she had never called me independently before. Her calls always went through Raymond. She called on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in the middle of editing a strategy document for a client, and I answered because I recognized her number and felt an instinct that this was something different. Patricia's voice was careful. She said she hoped she was not interrupting. I said she was not. She said she wanted to talk to me about something and she hoped I would hear her out. I said I was listening. What followed was a conversation that I have thought about many times since, not because of what Patricia said, but because of what it revealed about the internal weather of my father's household. Patricia told me that Raymond had been struggling at work. He had been at the same accounting firm for 12 years, and there had been some restructuring, and his role had become less secure than he had expected. She said he was stressed in a way she had not seen him before, a quieter kind of stress that he was managing privately. She said she thought it was affecting his judgment and his behavior, and she wanted me to know that in case it explained some things. She said it in the way that a person says something when they are genuinely trying to build a bridge, not making excuses exactly, but offering context. I listened to all of it. I told her I appreciated her telling me. I asked if Raymond was okay, not performatively, but genuinely because whatever had happened between us, he was still my father and I did not wish him harm. Patricia said he was managing. She said she thought hearing from me more regularly would help him. And then she said something that I found deeply revealing. She said, "He talks about your company now, Lousia. He tells people you're his daughter and he mentions the article. I think he's prouder than he knows how to say." I said thank you. I meant it partially. And I held the rest of it quietly inside myself, the part that noticed that even now, in the moment that was supposed to be about repair, the conversation had circled back to what I was doing for the family image. The pride existed in proportion to the visible success. The warmth existed because the article had made warmth easier. And none of it yet included the words I had never received, which were simply, "I was wrong to do that. You did not deserve that. I am sorry for choosing to lead that pylon." I did not say any of that to Patricia. I said I would call Raymond more often and I would try. And I kept that promise, not because I had forgiven everything, but because I had decided that my relationship with my father was worth tending, even imperfect, even unresolved, even knowing that the pride he now showed me was partly a reflection of his own needs rather than a pure recognition of mine. I tended it knowing what it was. That felt more honest to me than either pretending it was something better or cutting it off entirely. The Marcus situation came up again approximately 3 months after the initial phone call. This time it was Marcus himself who reached out, not through Raymond. He sent me a professional message on LinkedIn, which is the platform he knew I used for work, and he said he had heard great things and he was wondering if I might have time to talk about his business. The message was polite and genuine. Marcus is not a bad person. He never had been. He was simply a man who had been positioned, by his stepfather's constant praise, as superior to me in a comparison I had never consented to participate in. He could not help the way Raymond used him any more than I could. I thought about his message for a full day before I responded. I thought about the laughing reaction he had left on Raymond's post. I thought about whether that single reaction, that one click, was enough to close a door permanently, or whether it was simply evidence of a person who had not thought carefully about what he was doing in a moment where the group culture made laughing feel low cost. I gave him the benefit of the small doubt. I wrote back and said I was open to a conversation, and we scheduled a call. The call was professional and actually quite good. Marcus was more self-aware than I expected. He explained what he was trying to build with the insurance practice, what his goals were, and what he felt was missing in his current approach. He did not mention Raymond. He did not mention the group chat. He spoke to me like a potential business contact, not like a stepbrother with complicated family history, and I respected that even as I noticed it. At the end of the call, he asked what it would look like to work together. I gave him a professional answer. I told him I would be happy to send over my services overview and rates, and I did exactly that within 24 hours because that is how I run my business. I treat every potential client professionally, and I do not discount myself for family connections. The rate I sent Marcus was the same rate I would have sent anyone. I was not punishing him. I was just not discounting myself. He came back and said the rate was a bit more than he had expected. He said he was hoping that as family there might be some flexibility. I said I understood, and I was honest with him. I said that I kept my professional relationships and my family relationships in separate categories because it helped me do my best work for everyone, and my rates reflected the real value of what I provided, and I did not adjust them based on personal connections. I said if it was not the right fit at this time, I completely understood, and I wished him well with the rebrand. He went quiet for a couple of days. Then he sent a message saying he had thought about it and he would like to move forward at the full rate. We signed an agreement and I did the work carefully and well because that is how I work. The results were good. Marcus told me at the end of the project that he had not expected the level of depth and follow-through I brought to it, and that surprised me a little, which then made me sad a little, because I realized that for all of Raymond's comparisons, Marcus had not actually known what I was capable of. He had only known the image of me that Raymond's stories had created, which was the safe and reliable one who could be depended on for practical things, but who perhaps overestimated herself. And now he had seen something different. Near the end of that project, Marcus said something to me directly that I did not expect and that I want to include here because it matters. He said, "Lousia, I want to say something and I hope it comes out right. What my stepfather did in the group chat was not okay. I clicked laugh and I should not have. I was just following what everyone else was doing and I did not think. I am sorry." He said it plainly and without excessive drama. He just said it, and I received it the same way. I said I appreciated him saying so. I said I knew he had not meant real harm. I said we were good. And we were, in the way that two people can be good who are choosing to know each other correctly going forward rather than spending time on the version of the relationship that went wrong. Raymond and I had another conversation about 4 months after the first real phone call, this time in person. He drove to my apartment and we sat at my kitchen table, the same table I had worked from during the hard months when the business was just starting. He brought coffee in cups from the place near his house that he had always known I liked, and I noticed that gesture. I did not let it do all the work of repair, but I noticed it. He said he owed me a proper apology. He said it without being asked, which was the part that mattered. He said he had been watching me build my business for months, and he had been thinking about what he had done, and he knew it had been wrong. He said he had been afraid in the early months that I was going to fail, and that his fear had somehow turned into something that looked like ammunition rather than concern. He said that was not the father he wanted to be. He said he knew Cecilia would have been disappointed in him, and that particular sentence cost him something real to say, because he said it quietly, and he did not look up from his coffee cup when he said it. I sat with that for a moment. I thought about what I wanted to give back to this moment and what I wanted to hold on to. I said I had heard him. I said I believed that he meant it. I said I was not going to pretend the group chat had not happened, because it had, and the fact of it was real and I carried it still. But I said I was willing to build something different going forward, not what we had before, but something more honest, something where he saw me clearly rather than through the lens of what I looked like to others. I said what I needed from him was not praise. I said what I needed was for him to stop measuring me against other people and start seeing me as who I actually was. He looked up from his coffee then. He said he could do that. I told him I believed he was going to try. We sat at that kitchen table for another hour and a half. We talked about Cecilia. We had not talked about her properly in years, not in a way that was about missing her rather than managing the absence of her. Raymond told me a story about her that I had never heard, about something she had said to him early in their marriage that had stuck with him for decades, and he cried a little when he told it, and I let that be what it was. There was real love in my father underneath all the image management and the fear. I had always known that. The love was just sometimes buried under a lot of heavy surface. That day, it came through. The business continued to grow after that. By the end of my second year of operating independently, I had 8 ongoing client relationships, a waiting list for new work, and enough financial stability to move out of my apartment and into a proper office space shared with 2 other small businesses I had come to genuinely respect. The follower count on the page my father had mocked was something I stopped tracking, not because it was not growing, but because the number had stopped being the point. The point was the work, the relationships, the results, the thing I was building one careful decision at a time. Sandra called me on the 2-year anniversary of the business launch, not because she had marked it on a calendar, but because she said she had been thinking about me and wanted to hear my voice. We talked for almost an hour. She told me that the family had shifted in the way they talked about me. She said the shift was not dramatic. Families rarely change dramatically. But there was a difference in the tone. She said when my name came up, people no longer added the little qualifier, but you know how Lousia is. The slight reservation that had always followed my name when family members were not sure what to make of my choices. The qualifier was mostly gone now. In its place was something that sounded, in Sandra's careful description, like simple respect. I thought about that word for a while after we got off the phone. Respect. Not awe, not envy, not performance, just respect. The quiet acknowledgement from people who had once laughed that you had known what you were doing, that you had earned what you built, that the confidence they had called excessive had in fact been exactly sized for the task in front of you. That meant something. Not because I needed their opinion to feel settled in myself, because I had stopped needing that somewhere in those months of building quietly while they were not watching. But it meant something because it was true, and truth landing in the right places, even late, even after difficulty, is not nothing. There is a thing that happens when you stop chasing approval from the people who withheld it. The silence you were filling with effort becomes available for something else. I had spent years doing extra, helping extra, being extra careful not to take up too much space or ask for too much credit or let my confidence show too openly, because I had absorbed, slowly and without knowing it, the message that my confidence was slightly more than I had earned. Unlearning that message did not happen in a single decision. It happened across months of choosing differently. Choosing to hold my rate when Marcus asked for a discount. Choosing not to explain myself in the family group chat when the article came out. Choosing to say plainly, to my own father, I have the screenshot, without aggression but without retreat. Choosing to rebuild from the lowest moment and not invite anyone to watch until the proof was already standing. There's also something I want to say about the people who were in that group chat who never apologized. The 14 who laughed. Greta, who started it. My Aunt Bev, who said "oh no honey" in a way that somehow managed to be condescending and pitying at the same time. My cousin Terrence, who told me to go back to the agency. I do not spend much time angry at them anymore, and I want to be honest about why. It is not because what they did was acceptable. It was not. A grown adult choosing to laugh publicly at someone's struggle is not a small thing, particularly when that someone is a family member who has never been anything but available to them. It is not acceptable behavior, and I did not decide that it was. But I also did not let it remain the thing I was building around. I stopped letting their laughter define the dimensions of my ambition. I decided I was building for the life I wanted, and not against the judgment they had shown. And that shift, from building against to building toward, changed the quality of everything I was doing. Greta sent me a message about 16 months after the incident. She said she had seen my name mentioned in a business context somewhere. She was vague about where, and she wanted to say that she thought what I was doing was impressive. She did not apologize specifically. She did not reference the group chat. She just offered a compliment wrapped in vagueness, the kind of message that is designed to land as generous without costing the sender anything. I replied with one sentence. I said, "Thank you, Greta." And I meant it exactly as much as it cost to type, which was not much, and that was fine. The message was received and responded to and placed in its category, which was, people who are capable of small warmth when the warmth costs them nothing. That is a real category of human behavior. It is not the worst kind. It is just not the kind I was choosing to build my life around. My Aunt Bev called me about a year after the incident and asked if I might be able to help her grandson, who was trying to build a social a presence for a small business he was starting. She said it as if it were a casual question, the kind you might ask someone you had always respected and wanted to tap for expertise. She said my name warmly. She did not reference the "oh no honey" comment. She said she had always known I was talented in this area. And I heard the revision happening in real time, the subtle rewriting of history that people do when the present fact of you makes the past version of their treatment of you embarrassing to them. I was not cruel to Bev. She is an older woman, and she is family, and whatever mixture of insecurity and group pressure and thoughtlessness had produced the "oh no honey" comment was not a simple thing to untangle. but I was honest. I told her I was running at full capacity and could not take on pro bono projects, but that I could point her grandson toward some good free resources online, and I did exactly that. I sent her 2 solid links and a brief note, and I left it there. This is what quiet dignity actually looks like in practice. It is not a dramatic scene. It is not a speech delivered in front of witnesses. It is not a screenshot posted in revenge. It is a series of small, clear choices made consistently over time, each one a little more aligned with who you actually are and who you are choosing to become. It is holding your rate. It is sending the links without the long explanation of why you are not discounting yourself. It is saying, I have the screenshot, and then moving forward. It is sitting at the kitchen table with your father and receiving a real apology without either collapsing into gratitude or withholding acknowledgement. It is calling Sandra back and letting the friendship be what it has always been, honest and steady, and not requiring you to perform anything. I am going to tell you one more thing that happened, because I think it is the part of the story that closes the circle in a way that feels real rather than neat. About 19 months after the group chat incident, my father had a situation at work that I will not describe in full because it is his private matter. But the brief version is that the restructuring at his firm went further than Patricia had indicated in that early call, and Raymond found himself in a position of needing to make some professional decisions he had not anticipated. He needed advice. Not money, not practical logistics, but strategic thinking about how to present himself professionally and how to navigate a transition. He called me, not Patricia, not Derek or Marcus, not a colleague. He called me on a Tuesday evening and he said, Lousia, I need to talk something through with you. I think you might see this more clearly than I do. And then he said something that I will remember for a long time. He said, you have learned how to build something from scratch, and I have not done that. I need someone who knows how to think about starting over. I sat with the phone against my ear, and I felt something move through me that was complicated and human and real. There was tenderness in it. There was also something that was not quite satisfaction, but was related to it. The quiet recognition that the world had rotated to a place where the man who had posted my lowest moment for laughs was now calling the phone of the person in that moment for counsel. Not to extract something, not to use my image. He was asking for the real thing. He was asking for my actual thinking. I said I would be glad to talk it through with him, and I meant it. Not because I had forgotten, not because the hurt had become nothing, but because the hurt had become smaller than the thing I was choosing instead. The thing I was choosing was a relationship with my father that was honest and real, built on who we actually were now rather than the versions of ourselves that had sat at the table of his house when Cecilia was alive and the family was still forming itself. We were different now. He was different. I was certainly different. And the conversation we had that night was, I think, the first one we had ever had where he spoke to me exactly as he would speak to someone whose judgment he trusted without reservation. That conversation lasted 2 hours. We talked about his professional situation carefully and practically, and I gave him my honest thinking without softening it, because he did not need softened thinking. He needed real thinking, and I respected him enough to give him the real version. By the end, he had a clearer direction, and he thanked me in a way that was specific and genuine. He said, "You are very good at this, Lousia." And then he paused and he said, "I should have said that a long time ago." I said, "You are saying it now," and that was enough. The family group chat is still active. I muted it a long time ago, and I only check it occasionally, usually when Sandra sends me a heads up that something relevant has been posted. The last time I checked it, there was a photo Raymond had shared of a newspaper clipping someone had sent him. The clipping was from a regional business section. It was about my company. He had posted it with the caption, "My daughter built this." No emojis, just those 4 words. I saw 14 reactions. Most of them were the heart. A couple of them were the applause. My Aunt Bev had written, "So proud of her." Terrence had written, "That's amazing, Lousia." Greta had not commented. Marcus had written, "She earned every bit of it." And Derek, Patricia's older son, had written something that made me sit quietly for a moment. He wrote, "She always was going to." He had always been the one who had tried, with that single heart react during the worst moment, to show some version of kindness. And now, in a group chat that had once laughed at my lowest point, he had written the truest thing that had been posted there. She always was going to. As if he had known, even then, even while the rest of them were laughing, that the person they were laughing at was not someone who was going to stay down. He was right. I was not. I am not. My name is Lousia, and I spent a long time making space for people who never fully made space for me. I kept showing up, kept staying quiet, kept smoothing things over, kept measuring myself against a ruler someone else was holding. And then one night, at 11:47, I got a notification that showed me exactly what that approach had been worth to the people I had been showing up for. And I put the phone down and I got to work. I do not need the family group chat to validate what I built. I do not need 14 hearts on a post to know that the business is real. I do not need Raymond's retelling of my success to feel the success. What I needed, and what I finally gave myself, was the decision to stop building my life around the approval of people who had not earned the right to define it. What I built from that silence on a Tuesday night, that cold, bright anger, that notebook with the underlined line. What I built alone first, and then with clients who trusted my work, and then eventually with a father who had learned, slowly, to see me correctly. The order of those things matters. The self-respect had to come first. Everything else followed it. That is not a fairy tale ending. There are still dinners where Raymond says something that lands slightly wrong. There are still family events where the old dynamics try to reassert themselves, where someone reaches for the version of me that was always available and always adjustable. I handle those moments differently now. Not perfectly, but differently. With a steadiness that comes from knowing exactly what I built, and how I built it, and why I do not need anyone's laughter or anyone's approval to know it is real. That steadiness is the quietest revenge there is, not because it was designed to punish anyone, but because it grew in the space that used to be filled with chasing, and it turned out that space had always been mine. If Lousia's story touched something in you today, I want to ask you one real question in the comments. Was there a moment in your own life when someone's doubt, someone's dismissal, someone's public disrespect became the exact fuel that made you build something better? Tell me about it below, because the people who come to this channel deserve to hear your version of that story too. And if today was the first time you heard Lousia's name, stay close, because she is not done yet.